Good afternoon. Welcome and thank you very much for joining our Cities Planning Community Conversation around the Charlotte Future 2040 Comprehensive Plan today. My name is Taiwo Jayoba. I am our Assistant City Manager, Planning, Design and Development Director. This is an opportunity for the Planning Department to hear directly from residents about the recommended draft of the comprehensive plan, which was released last week. Before we get started, I would like all staff in the room and anyone joining us virtually to introduce themselves.
Kathy Cornett, Planning Staff. Yolanda Jones, Planning Staff.
Sierra Bratton, Communication and Marketing.
Thank you. Anyone joining us virtually, staff.
Alicia Osborne, Planning.
Allison Craig, Deputy Planning Director. Laura Harmon, planning staff.
All right, thank you. Now I'm going to go over a quick few items actually regarding housekeeping. During this conversation, our goal is to collect feedback from you, our community, and we will recognize as many of you as we can in terms of answering questions or clarifying comments. Any comments that we are unable to get to within the scheduled time frame tonight, we will address those via email following this session. When it's time for the live discussion, please make sure you use your raise your hand feature so that we can call upon you. Staff will also keep a list of who is next to speak. And when it's your turn, we will call your name and you will be unmuted. Each person will have 2 minutes to speak. You can also use the Q&A feature to type your feedback as we move throughout today's event. Additionally, we will be monitoring comments on social media. So at this point, I don't know if there's any council member or planning commissioners present so they can introduce themselves. So if there's none, as they join us, we definitely will make sure to acknowledge that. So we're going to begin the live discussion at this point. Please remember to use the raise your hand feature so we can call on you. We will also keep a list of who is next to speak. So when it's your turn, we will call your name and you will be unmuted. Each person, again, will have 2 minutes to speak. So our first comment is from? We're waiting for the first comment. Okay, so please get on it. Okay. Ms. Ferguson, you have a question or comment?
I have a question. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, very well.
Okay, super. So my question is regarding Rule 2.1, and it's based on something that occurred in my neighborhood a few years ago. So someone several years ago purchased a couple of houses in our neighborhood. They put up a few additional interior walls and another exterior door, and then started renting it out to 3 different families. And this was all in the size of a home of about 1,400 square feet. And they did this on 2 different properties on the same street. And of course, because the property was not intended to have that kind of density, the front lawn turned into a parking lot, and it was just a mess. So luckily, our code enforcement officer noticed what was going on, and he intervened. And thanks to the existing zoning laws, they had to restore those 2 properties to single-family homes. So my question is, if Rule 2.1 is enacted, what is to stop a landlord, or in worst case scenario, a slumlord, from chopping up houses into tiny little rental properties like this? And since we also have a shortage of rental properties in Charlotte, I'm sure they would, be rented out, even if they're incredibly small. And this would degrade neighborhoods and allow landlords to make huge profits off of renters who still don't have a path to affordable home ownership. So I'm wondering if you can address that.
Thank you very much for your question. I appreciate that. So today in our city, there are lots, especially on corners, where we can accommodate duplexes and triplexes depending on the adequacy of that lot. And so we do have that provision today. And the same thing will apply if we were to expand that opportunity throughout our city. We will definitely, the plan does not provide or cannot really provide policies around whether someone sells their property or they rent it out to someone. But there is a language in the recommended draft that talks about making sure that we keep landlords, particularly of affordable housing units, accountable for the maintenance of habitable premise, because that's part of the State Landlord and Tenant Act. And we can actually enforce that, just like the example you cited. And so that language will be part of the comprehensive plan. Now we know that properties are treated differently by different landlords, whether they are single-family properties or they are plex units. But we want to make sure that regardless of what happens to any one of these properties, if Policy 2.1 is part of what the comprehensive plan adoption is, we make sure that this policy also with regards to keeping tenants and landlords accountable, that will be part of the plan that will be adopted itself. With regards to housing supply in our community, that's one of the reasons that this policy is part of the plan. Can it guarantee affordability? Nothing really can. It's just a tool in the toolkit to really make sure that we can increase supply of housing, regardless of how we do it, whether it's through townhomes or through duplexes or triplexes in our city. And so the plan sets policies in place to help us do that, but it does not make a provision for whether you sell that property or you lease it. We would definitely encourage home ownership, and there are other tools that we have today that can actually do that for us outside of this comprehensive plan, but they are also highlighted in the plan.
Okay, thank you. But if I understand you correctly, that means there's nothing that would prevent what occurred in my neighborhood previously from happening under Rule 2.1, and there would be no recourse to force it back into a single-family home as there was before. Is that correct?
We will have to make sure that code enforcement officers are aware of what's going on so that they can take action if a particular property is not being properly maintained. Thank you. Our next speaker is Jimmy Vasiliou.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hello, I just had a couple of comments. My name is Jimmy Basilio, and I'm part of the Charlotte Community Benefits Coalition. As a member of the Community Benefits Coalition, we demand that the 2040 Comprehensive Plan keeps the existing community benefits language and, in fact, strengthens the inclusion of community benefits throughout the plan and the UDO. Sorry if you can hear the siren. Community engagement, the proposed language change is not enough. What we have now is considered community engagement, and what Charlotte communities need is a stronger process for actual benefits towards the community. Community benefits agreements are the tool for true equity and engagement. The legality of CBAs are not the question. As we have seen, we want access to equitable development and benefits throughout the Crescent to the same degree as communities in the Wedge. Access is equity, and equity comes through community benefits agreements. And that's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Maybe I can clarify something. We have not, nothing has changed with regards to reference to community benefits agreement in the recommended draft as a potential tool for our city. Nothing has changed with regards to that. That word has not been changed to community engagement or anything. However, we have to make a distinction between what's benefit to the community and community benefit agreement as a potential tool. So those are two separate things in the document. As of now, we have not changed community benefits agreement to community engagement or community benefits to community engagement. We'll continue to take comments on this, so I really appreciate you sharing that with us. There's a question on Facebook. Will we, the folks that live here, get to vote on any of these? Might be worth setting the stage for next steps leading up to the final vote. Well, thank you very much for that question. I appreciate that. I believe that your votes are expressed through your elected officials, both the 11 council members who represent respective districts, as well as the 4 at-large council members. Are you able to express your voice with regards to your preferences? Certainly so. You can communicate that directly to them or to us as well, and we will make sure that your comments or your comments are noted and that your questions are responded to. However, you are able to also email the mayor and council members with regards to parts of the plan that you support or do not support. But it's important to let your voice be heard. And the council will be taking, according to schedule right now in front of us, council should be taking a vote on June 21 after a recommendation from the planning committee on June 15. Thank you. I think the next speaker is Eric Zavera.
Thank you, Taiwo, and city staff. Tonight I'm going to be speaking on behalf of Sustain Charlotte and some comments, first off, of support of the second draft. We support the clearer definition of what equity is in volume 1. We also support the increase in percentage of households that can access daily needs without requiring a car, also known as the 10-minute neighborhoods, because it sets a goal of more active transportation and leading for healthier and higher quality of life for the residents of Charlotte. We also support the clear establishment of the Community Benefits Coalition that was called for in the revised draft, and added call to work with them to develop a menu or a playbook for the benefits within the community. We also, in Goal 10, making committed the community benefits agreement and asking for the investments in infrastructure. We like to add that those investments in infrastructure that could be called for in the community benefits agreement go towards healthy environments and increase public access to parks and green spaces. We also would like just to add some clarification on tree shaded in goals 4 and 5, that they not only just include tree shaded sidewalks, but also the trails and the bike routes, because having tree shaded infrastructure beyond just sidewalks is also important. And then lastly, some clarification or added wording in the complete place types and components of place types found on page 40 and 41, that adding adaptive regulations that would adjust hierarchically across the city according to place type would maybe add flexibility to our goals that have been called into question when we have competing goals between trees and affordable housing. If those goals were allowed to be flexible and just according to place types, that might give some flexibility between those stated goals. We could submit these in writing as well to city staff so you have them, but that's just a couple of the comments we have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, please go ahead and submit them to us. Mr. Doyle George.
Yes, hello. I'd like to ask a question regarding a recent Court of Appeals decision.
Can you please lean into the mic? I can hardly hear you.
Yes, I'm sorry. I'm in a car
Okay.
in Charleston, so bear with me. There's a recent Court of Appeals decision, which was decided on May 18th of this year, that eliminated all restrictive covenants that are over 30 years old. How will that be impacted by the 2040 plan?
Thank you very much for your question. My understanding is that that Court of Appeals decision is not yet final, but will be reviewed by the Supreme Court. So at this point in time, it is not our intention to modify our response regarding deed restrictions. We do know that as it is today, Policy 2.1, not Rule 2.1, but Policy 2.1, if it becomes adopted as part of the plan, will not supersede existing codes, covenants, and restrictions. And we're not going to, at this point in time, introduce any language to give the impression that anything has changed with regards to enforcing private deed restrictions. That will be a different subject that our attorney may address when that time comes. But we do know that there is nothing final with that Court of Appeals decision. And so that does not factor into our conversation at this point in time.
Well, actually, Taiwo, if I can correct you a little bit, what I read was the Court of Appeals decision is final, and the decision was issued on May 18th. It was a decision actually by a Mecklenburg County judge, and it was appealed in 2019. And as far as I know, it has not been appealed to the North Carolina Supreme Court, nor is there any inclination for them to take the case. So I'm sorry, but the law in North Carolina, under the Court of Appeals decision, is at this point.
Okay, well, thank you for your information. I'm sure that the time comes, the attorney's office will respond to that. But at this point in time, we're not planning to modify any language with regards to deed restrictions in the plan. Thank you, Mr. Judge. Mr. Charles B.
Yes, thank you. Good evening. Question that I have, actually a three-part question, but first of all, it's pretty much given that the increase of density is necessary in Charlotte to accommodate our new residents moving here. We all realize that, are trying to work together to make that where it's advantageous for everybody. The first part of the question is the number of occupants in a single-family home and the parking to accommodate that. I'd like to just mention the other two questions, and then you can address each if you will. The second one is the number of MDUs, the multiple dwelling units in a given neighborhood, and those types, such as a duplex, triplex, quad. Is there going to be any kind of language that says how many of each can be in a given neighborhood on a given street? The third thing is the North Carolina State's position for increasing the density and how that will play a role in what is voted upon with what council is doing. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So one thing that the plan cannot do is to prescribe, but the plan can set policy framework, which is really what it's doing right now with regards to what kind of policies can we have in place that can help us can support the generation of more housing units, which will allow us to increase the supply of housing stock in our city today. Once we move into place types mapping and then eventually into the Unified Development Ordinance where you have the regulations, that's when we're going to be able to define which lots are actually adequately sized to accommodate the type of units that we're talking about, whether they be duplexes or they be triplexes. The plan calls for quads or quadruplexes to be located along arterials because of their size, but for 2-unit homes, 2-unit attached homes or 3-unit attached homes, the plan just provides a policy in place. There will still be an opportunity to take a good look at all of that with regards to which particular lot will be suitable for those when we get into the regulatory piece. So you may find on some streets that it may not be possible to do so many, and you may find on some other streets that it may be possible to do multiple. And so there are other factors that will be considered, such as lot size, the scale of the development itself, parking opportunities, the height. And so there are other things that are included today in that plan to make sure that once we get into the regulatory environment, we are able to determine which lots will accommodate these types of development. Thank you for your question. Ms. Davis, Mimi Davis?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay, really what I have are some observations, and I'm really not sure
Who
why
maybe
this
Davis
forum
is?
tonight is even being offered other than for City Council and for the City Planning Department to check another community engagement box. I'm not alone in this thought or with the frustrations I feel. The public has been communicating its concerns and comments with
Hello? Did we lose you?
You here? Okay, I'm here.
Okay, yeah, sorry, I didn't.
Okay.
I heard the first part, but you kind of went quiet there.
I keep getting muted.
I can hear you now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Kathy, Mimi is supposed to be talking.
Okay, Mimi is supposed to be, yeah, Mimi is supposed to be the one talking. So please, Mimi, go ahead. Hello?
Mimi, please speak.
Is Mimi Davis still on?
Hello, yeah.
Okay, please go on, Mimi Davis. Hello?
Hello.
Please go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Is this Mimi Davis?
Oh, you can hear me?
I can hear you.
Hello? Can you hear me? Okay, sorry. Yeah, I had a couple questions. One, the gentleman that spoke a few minutes ago about density is something that concerned us too. I'm president of East Charlotte Coalition of Neighborhoods, and we already have some neighborhoods that are quite dense. We're concerned about the way this could mushroom. If there were, for instance, 2 quadruplexes on a major intersection but near a residential area, then we've gone from 3 families maybe in an area, 2 quadruplexes and a single, to 9 families. And we've gone from 6 cars in that area to 18. This seems like it would be very disturbing to neighborhoods. And we wonder if there are going to be any limits on the density that you put in a neighborhood. And if so, how would that be structured? And then the other thing is, there's a lot of talk about 10-minute neighborhoods. But the neighborhoods of East Charlotte are just one huge development after another huge development. There's no land available for grocery stores or anything else that people could walk to. How are you going to restructure your thinking to accommodate these massive developments that we're seeing around us?
Thank you very much. Yes, today, in the absence of the plan, there is density, but that density is not made up of, it's not because of the plex units. Especially when you think about East Charlotte. East Charlotte today has the 2nd highest number of single-family residential units in our city. And it's not because of so many duplexes or triplexes or even quadplexes happening there. If this plan wasn't adopted and you have no plan at all, I think we'll continue to see single-family units being built because single-family subdivisions are also density. And when you have those, you still generate a number of vehicle trips per single-family units. And so where you do have duplexes and triplexes and quadplexes are really not a whole lot throughout our city. And so what we have is a lot of, whether they be detached or attached single-family units that, are causing the density that we have today. But we're being mindful of what happens in an existing neighborhood, for example. And so when this policy or this plan becomes adopted, part of the engagement with you during the place types mapping is to walk through the methodology and then discuss also growth allocations for different geographies in our city. But I just want you to know that this plan itself is not necessarily a result of the density that we have today because it's not even adopted yet. But once we get into the place types mapping and eventually the regulatory piece, we're mindful of that concern with regards to density tied to traffic volume, tied to presence of infrastructure. One of the things that we've heard from your representative, especially Councilmember Newton and Councilmember Dimpo Ajmera, is to, incorporate into this plan the formation of an infrastructure advisory council that will actually help to assess the level of infrastructure investment that we have in our city today and to make sure that they are done in an equitable manner so that whether you live within 10 minutes of an amenity or service today or not, over the next few years, we are going to carry out, if that becomes part of what council adopts in the plan, we're going to carry out, that council will carry out some assessment of what we have today and how going forward we can equitably do that throughout the city. Not every community will be able to have access to everything within 10 minutes walk or, bike, but if we invest more in transportation, in public transit, we might be able to get some communities closer enough to bus routes or even rail corridors. It's likely not going to happen in 5 years, which is why this is, again, a 20-year plan. And over the next 20 years, how can we make sure that whether you live within 10 minutes, walk or bike, or proximity to transit, you have a choice to drive or to leave your vehicle at home and use another means of mobility. We do know that it doesn't happen today in every part of Charlotte, and that may just not be something that's feasible for every part of the city. But we have to have that aspirational goal as part of a plan for a city that wants to continue to invest in multi-mobility and give options to other people who live in our city. Thank you. We have a comment. Why do we not have a draft of the UDO? Explain how density limitations will be made a part of zoning under the UDO. Will communities have practical input into density limitations as part of a place type? We do not have a draft of the unified. By the way, the UDO means Unified Development Ordinance. That's a consolidation of about 8 different regulations and ordinances that we have in the city today, including the zoning ordinance, the subdivision ordinance, sidewalk regulations, tree ordinance, as well as other other ordinances and regulations that we have. So it's really a consolidation of everything related to land use regulations across the city today. We have all of them in different places, being monitored and managed by different departments or even within departments. What we plan to do with the Unified Development Ordinance is to consolidate all of them together. We do not have a draft yet. And the first draft of the Unified Development Ordinance is anticipated to happen in late summer. So if the council adopts the comprehensive plan in June, then between first week in August to the end of August, we're likely going to see the first draft of that Unified Development Ordinance. However, there is an Ordinance Advisory Committee that has been meeting for more than 2 years, even prior to the start of the comprehensive plan, and they have been reviewing different sections or different conversations. For example, when they met today, they talked about tree ordinance, and when they met previously, it was about subdivision. And so all of these conversations eventually will result in having a first draft that will be issued for public input in late summer. So that's when you're going to have it. So all the conversations they're having right now is making sure that some of the policies that are being discussed in the comprehensive plan eventually makes their way into that Unified Development Ordinance. With regards to density limitations, the zoning ordinance obviously will not be prescribing where you have what, but different zoning districts will have regulations attached to them, so that what's applicable in a particular zoning district may not necessarily be what's applicable in other zoning districts. Hence the reason you have 10 different place types today in the comprehensive plan, whether they be neighborhood 1, where you're going to have predominantly single-family housing, and you have duplexes and triplexes, and then you have neighborhood 2, where you are going to have more housing types, which is really mostly multifamily. That's where you're going to probably have more density. The neighborhood 1 place type is going to be low density, on the lower end of the density, compared to the neighborhood 2 place type. Then you have other place types related to campus or commercial or neighborhood center or regional activity center. Every single one of those will have different transition areas as to what you have between one place type and another. And until we get into that place type mapping effort, the UDO, or the Unified Development Ordinance, will not really begin to translate those place types into the zoning districts. So that's when we can be having conversations around density limitations, whatever that really means. Ms. Davis, Kathy Davis.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
All right, I apologize for earlier. I heard Davis and I just assumed it was me.
No, not a problem.
Like I said, I'm not alone in my thoughts or frustrations in that the public has been communicating its concerns and comments with the Charlotte 2040 plan for months. And yet, again, just earlier this week, you indicated that the latest draft is essentially the same as the original draft. So I guess I wonder, what is the point of this meeting yet again? We've had 5 out of 7 city council district representatives have presented very well thought out and educated cases against some of the plan's most significant policies. They've even brought forward alternatives to these policies. Yet, even with less than 30% of elected district representatives supporting these policies, they have moved forward because the at-large representatives refuse to acknowledge the concerns brought forward and the alternative ideas from over 70% of district representation. After becoming the city planner, you yourself stated your thought process that, quote, if it doesn't work for the entire community, it doesn't work, unquote. Clearly, the Charlotte 2040 plan does not work for the entire community. It doesn't even seem to work for a majority of the community. It doesn't work. Our voices are not being heard, our concerns are not being addressed. Also, as a side note, I've been requesting information from Alicia and Kathy for about 6 weeks now in regards to the fiscal policy after we had had a phone conversation, and I have followed up on that several times and is still yet to receive the information I requested. So again, just another example of how this community engagement is really not working. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Davis. I understand the frustration, but you cannot release a recommended draft and not have an opportunity to hear again, maybe from people who have not had the opportunity to participate, or from residents like yourselves who would like to be able to emphasize their comments that they made previously. But I can assure you that we're not ignoring any comment. Comments received may not necessarily result in a revision to the document themselves, but there's a number of comments that are received that actually became part of what's in the recommended draft. As I said on Monday, the plan was not to do a rewrite of the plan. It was not necessarily to have a different plan, but to hopefully have a better plan as a result of input from council members and residents like yourselves. So I get the frustration, but we definitely want to make sure that we are giving everyone an opportunity to have an input in the process. And if there's anything you're still waiting on, I'm sure that we will get that to you, hopefully before the end of this commenting period. Council, I'm going to go back to Council again on June 7th to make a presentation, and then I will be back to the Planning Committee on June 15th. And Council eventually will make their decision on June 21. Today is not just the only opportunity to receive feedback from you. We also have been getting a lot of comments via email and other avenues as well, and we will continue to take this. Again, please be mindful that not every comment will result in a revision to the plan. It depends on what specifically those comments relate to. And you can also be sure that whatever comments you're sharing with us, most likely Council has also heard those, and they are also sharing those with us as well. So I do get the frustration, and I apologize for any way we have not been able to be as effective, but we definitely want to make sure that the plan that we have at the end of the day will be one that, even if everybody doesn't agree necessarily with it, but as we implement it gradually, it's something that our entire community can rally behind. So please don't stop sharing. I will continue to make sure that we listen to you, and where appropriate, make changes to future documents. Thank you. Mr. Charles B.
So currently, my community, like many others, we're challenged with where a single-family home is inhabited by maybe 4 or more individuals looking to share that. Each has a vehicle, at least one. In some cases, they have work vehicles in addition, trailers, campers, other things, and parking becomes very challenged. They're parking on lawns, they're driving around and parking in the back. And the concern is, if we are challenged with this now, what is the future going to behold? It seems like we're not able to really get a grip on what's happening now, and single-family home neighborhoods are suffering. As a side note, back in one of the other, in the listening meeting, I had extended an invitation for anybody from council, yourself included, to come out for a personal tour so I could show you exactly examples of what we're talking about, working examples. We seem to be going to other cities from Minneapolis and so forth, looking at their examples, but we have our own right here. And it's a friendly invitation. I'd still like, some response, other than a response that I received that some things get through the cracks. And I don't think that was really an appropriate comment to my invitation and concerns.
Thank you. Is this the Parkview development by Carolina Place Mall?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, I have been there a couple of times. I did tour the subdivision with Councilmember Driggs. So yes, I am familiar. I've actually been there a couple of times, so I do understand the situation in terms of people parking on gravel or even on grass and all of that. That was even before we started the comprehensive plan. That's an issue that we've seen. It's really more of a code enforcement situation that we truly believe that can be resolved when we have that in terms of capacity. That does not necessarily mean that what you're sharing with us is not real, because it is real. I have been there a couple of times, so I totally get it. And we just have to make sure that with this plan going forward, we would have some of the policies in place that will protect established neighborhoods like yourselves. If you look especially, I believe goal number 9 or so is the one that talks about protecting characters of our existing neighborhoods. I think that's where you may be able to find some policies that could translate into regulations that could be enforced. But I will reach back out to you if, I definitely don't mind coming back again to take a tour with you. But I've been there about 2 or 3 times, but I'll be happy to do that again. At least all those trips were pre-pandemic, so I definitely don't have a problem coming back again. So if you will reach back out to me, and we can plan on a time I can meet you there to take another look, I will be happy to do that. Thank you. Any other speaker? Comments? Okay, we have a comment from Facebook. When you put trucking companies in Charlotte, you need proper transportation routes. You have TT going down Sam Wilson, turning right onto Morris Chapel Road. I was almost hit head on. You guys need to fix to make roads safe in residential neighborhood roads prior to putting businesses in areas. Thank you very much for that comment. We're definitely aware of that, and I know that our Department of Transportation has responded to a couple of similar comments in the past, but thank you very much for sharing that with us. Okay, we have another comment coming in, so please give us another minute. In the meantime, Mr. Ross, Ron Ross, please go ahead and share your thoughts.
Good evening. My name's Ron Ross. I'm a good friend of the Space Community. And I am also
Mr. Ross, I can't hear you, so if you could lean in.
Is that any better?
Oh, much better. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks. Again, Ronald Ross from Northwood Estates Community Organization, president of the neighborhood, and I'm also a member of the Community Benefits Coalition. And as being a member of the Community Benefits Coalition, I would like to make a request and demand that the comp plan retain the existing language, community benefit agreement, versus saying community engagement. The utilization of community benefits is a tool that is meant to ensure development that serves the needs of the residents of the community, and not just the commercial developers and commercial tenants outside of that area. And it is very important that the development of that is being constructed includes the community voices and also provides meaningful benefits to the community. As in the past, communities have not been represented in the meetings and the developments that have been proposed by developed in our communities, in particular communities located in the west side of Charlotte. And I would also like to request that the elected officials be involved in the agreements, encouragement of the agreements and also the discussions that would be warranted by the coalition. At the present time, the demands of the community is communities that are being affected negatively by the development are not involved in meaningful and engaging discussions as to what is being proposed for their communities. And just to bring out a point, it is not. It has been stated by the city attorney that the CBAs, the community benefits agreements, that they are not illegal transactions, and it is not an illegal process for communities to engage in. And I would beg to have discussions that community benefit agreements are not already being engaged in and have not transpired already in the city of Charlotte, in particular South Charlotte areas. And more recently, if we take a look at the Ballantyne project. So again, I would ask that some clarification as to whether that community benefit agreements have not already been taking place in Charlotte. So this is nothing new that is being requested. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ross. You were breaking in and out there, but I think I understand your question. Yes, we do have benefits that go to the community today, either through a rezoning process, which is really more of negotiation, or through a development agreement process where the city has an interest in the property, whether it's financial interest or property interest in kind. And so those are really how it happens today in different parts of the city. However, if you look at, I believe it's page 73 of our current recommended draft plan, it actually talks about the establishment of a community benefits stakeholder group, like you said, Community Benefits Coalition. So that language is still in the plan that was released last week. We also still have references to community benefits agreements in the plan. However, only that we will explore or at least see how we can utilize tools, whether it's referred to as a CBA or not, but the intent really is to get community participate in the development process. And so we have not changed that language. However, we're distinguishing between what's community benefits agreement and what's benefits to the community. Those are two separate things. One is formalized in form of an agreement. The other is just benefits that will come to the community as a result of some development happening. However, we are going to be, actually the Urban Land Institute of Charlotte to be convening a work session in the next couple of weeks, where they will bring national experts to really help us look at this. And they will be interviewing, at least having conversations with members of the community, as well as members of the development industry as to how can we make this happen in our city, in our community. And so please stay tuned. The plan is still very active in terms of how can we make sure that we have, community or residents, regardless of where they live in our city, participate in the development process. How that eventually gets fine-tuned and shaped out and refined or even codified is something we all have to have a discussion around. So please stay tuned and stay engaged on that subject. Thank you. There's a comment with regards to single-family zoning doesn't stop that level of density if it's not enforced. If the current rules are not being enforced, what makes us think they will be when the plan is in place? Yeah, I'd like to separate the two. One is a policy, the other is enforcement of regulation. And again, even if this plan was not in place, we need to make sure that we strengthen our ability to enforce violations. One thing that this plan, as we definitely are not able, according to North Carolina General Assembly statute, we are not able to keep registry of landlords. And so what this plan has really put forward as a policy is to ensure that landlords conform with this Landlord and Tenant Act in terms of keeping their properties up to date. And if they're not, then we can actually enforce those. The fact that today we may be having challenges with enforcement does not necessarily have to do with whether you have single-family zoning or single-family housing, or whether you have different units of housing available. It really has to do with how can we make sure that we expand our capacity to be able to enforce violations of properties going forward. We truly believe that that policy in the comprehensive plan will help us to actually elevate this situation to a higher level where we can continue to make sure that our neighborhoods where you have, whether it's single-family housing or other type of housing that are not being kept up to shape, will be monitored and violations will be enforced strictly. So those are going to continue to happen. We just believe that the policy helps to highlight that situation as we go forward. Thank you. Okay, no more comments? Okay. Well, thank you very much. I believe that we might, unless we have anybody who is chomping at the bit to speak up or has any additional comments for us, we will wrap this up. But in the meantime, I want to repeat what I said earlier. This is not the only opportunity to hear from you. You can email us. You can call 311. You can also go straight to the website at cltfuture2040.com and make sure that you provide your feedback directly on the website. Those comments are going to be responded to. We are receiving responses. We're receiving comments by emails or directly on the website. So please keep them coming. The due date for the comments period is really June 3rd. That does not mean that we will not continue to hear from you, but we just want to make sure that prior to releasing another version of the plan, which will be presented to Council as a final draft, we want to make sure that whatever is outstanding is addressed. So once again, thank you very much for showing up this evening. We definitely appreciate the opportunity to hear from you.